You'll have to allow me to sit on the stool to preach today because I still haven't fully regained my balance and strength, so it's probably safer if I don't walk around like normal. When you're in the hospital, especially for a prolonged time, you learn how many holes there are in the ceiling of your room, and that the view out the window really never changes, and all those kinds of things. The point being, you have a lot of time to think. And it's always better to occupy your mind with productive things than all of the what-ifs that the medical profession brings to you. And by the way, we should be very, very grateful to all those people who do the tasks they do to keep us healthy. And we should also be very cognizant of how, as the scriptures say, we are wonderfully woven. Because our bodies, when they function, are tremendous gifts to us. Anyway, as I was sitting there thinking, well, here we are, it's December again, and something is happening at the Haemmelmann household, because December in the Haemmelmann household is the 13th month of the year. It is the unlucky month. It is, if anything is going to happen in our household that is not wanted, it is in the month of December. I mean, some of you might think, wow, this is great. 2 weeks before Christmas, you get a couple weeks off. But really, it's like the Super Bowl, and you just wonder if, how you're going to make it through. But we have a long history of stuff that happens in December. We had a child we had to put in the hospital who was facing some critical issues at one time. My mother-in-law got very ill. She too was hospitalized. On December 21st one year, I fell, ruptured a disc in my back, had to have back surgery, and 3 days later, on our anniversary, my father died. Let me see, what else? Played tennis one night on December 22nd, and on the way home was struck by a construction truck, nearly killed, and missed that Christmas too, was in the hospital. So you can see December, at our household, we all put on protective wear December 1st. And on December 31st, when you're looking to the new year, we're just glad to get past the last one. Because December is daunting, and for us, it is very dangerous. And so as I was thinking about it, it didn't surprise me that here I am in the hospital, and here I am trying to wrestle with what is this all about and what does this mean. And what struck me is that not only is December dangerous, but Christmas is dangerous. Or at least Christmas should be dangerous. Not just for the Haemmelmanns, but for all of us. Because Christmas, when we get beyond all the stuff we have saturated it with and layered upon it, the Christmas story, when you set aside all the festivity and the festivals and the feasting and all the stuff we do to make ourselves feel good, and we know that everybody doesn't feel good during Christmas, that Christmas is hard for people, especially those who've lost loved ones. But we do our best to make it the best that we can. And yet, when you take off all that veneer and you set it aside, the Christmas story is really a pretty risky, scary, dangerous one. I mean, when you set aside all the tradition and the trumpets, you get down to the nuts and the bolts, and you find that what happens here is really in the gristle of our lives. Mary. Hallmark likes to put her in nice blue woven Lords and Taylor apparel. And the baby is always beautiful and perfect and the light just right. And yet, if you can separate yourself from that, this is not, you have to believe that this was a pretty scary occurrence. To be pregnant at 12 and 14, it may be more socially acceptable in today's age, but in most ages, and certainly back then, it was not. It meant that you would be ostracized. It meant that for the rest of your life, you could not go to the well when the rest of the women could. That they might look at you, but they would always say, oh, that's the girl. That's a scary, scary place to be. And giving birth, who's not afraid of birth at an older age? How can one even begin to fathom giving birth at a younger age and not being guaranteed a husband to help you? And so this news is not at first, I have to believe, good news. You know, Luke records it as good news, but remember, Luke is writing many years later when the church and when the faithful have come to understand this and interpret this and explain where it's all headed. But when she receives that news, I'm sure it's pretty. In fact, it says in there, she is afraid. She's afraid of not only what it means to her physically, but socially as well. And the same holds true for Joseph. For Joseph to accept her as his wife means that he is stepping outside the Jewish law for being a righteous man. A righteous man would set her aside. A righteous man would put her away. She's used goods. That's not what a righteous person would do. And so for Joseph to continue on and to marry and to accept her means that he is accepting her outcastness too. He is accepting the risk. He is accepting the fact that he will be the talk of the town as well. Then we have the story of the wise men. Now, who here thinks it's a really great idea to pack up everything you have, move across some of the most dangerous terrain in the world because you've seen a star? Have any takers on that? I mean, really, that you know, and of course we read into it, they knew where they were going and what it was all about. Well, maybe, but they saw this star, they felt this calling, and they went through the Arabian Peninsula. Remember, coming from modern-day Iraq, Iran, some of the most rugged and scary, full of bandits and robbers and everything. And then the end of the story says, you'd think they'd be welcomed when they get to Jerusalem. Oh, no. They have to present their case in front of one of the most murderous tyrants of the day. A man who had no problem killing his wife, and he liked her, and his sons. Anyone who was a threat to them. And of course, he lies to them, says, go find him, that I might worship him. When in the back of his mind, he's going to kill them too. Remember, that's the Herod that kills all the infants. It's a dangerous story. And then there were the shepherds. Oh, the cuddly shepherds, the warm people who are watching their flocks on the hills at night. And they hear the angels sing. Okay, I got it. And then they leave their flock to go to Bethlehem to see the baby. Now, you get that, right? I want to know who's watching those sheep when they're going to Bethlehem. That's their livelihood. They too are moving in a dangerous and precarious way. Now, I don't want to overplay or stretch this too far because it simply is my thoughts and my interpretation. But it seems to me that no matter where you look in this whole Christmas story, there is a dangerous thread woven in it. That whoever responds, whoever is called, who is ever touched, even before they see or know or have a return on their risk-taking, they move in a different direction. They all go a contrary way. And whenever you go in contrariness to society, to culture, to religion, what do you risk? You risk the wrath of everyone else. And when this Jesus grows up, he moves from a babe, he doesn't run away from that. He says to his followers, he says, if you're going to follow me, there is a cross to bear. There is danger to confront. And though we excel in celebrating the joy of this event in our preaching, in our singing, in our holiday festivities, I think we forget the important and critical fact that Christ came to change things, to make a difference, to offer a message and hope. But to accept that is dangerous because it involves a cost. Now, I'm sure everyone here has seen the bumper stickers that say freedom is not free. And of course, we know that in honor of veterans and the ultimate price they pay. But from a religious perspective, I would say grace and forgiveness is not free. Oh, God gives us grace and forgiveness, and God does not demand anything in return for that gift, but God expects something. Did you ever think about it? There's no demand, but there's an expectation, because if we accept it, if we follow, if we acknowledge that it comes to us, then it begins like a seed to be planted within us, and that seed challenges us and encourages us to see things differently, to act things differently, to bubble up from the bottom rather than always seeking to be at the top. And it makes a difference. And when you accept that, when you realize that, you begin a different path, a different journey in life, one that may separate you from friends, from lifestyles, from goals that you've always been told are the most important things in your life, and then all of a sudden you see them as not so significant. You know, when you're lying in the hospital, what's the most important thing to you? It has nothing to do with your status, your employment. It is simply to stand up and walk and find some semblance of health. You know, your whole perspective becomes different and it changes. And this grace and forgiveness of Christ does the same thing. It sets you on a path. And people don't understand you. They'll say, well, you're whacked out. You're different. You're strange. And then, yeah, I am. I understand that. I understand that. But I found a path in life that is far more satisfying and far more rewarding than the one everyone else taught me, the journey they said I should be on. You know, this grace and forgiveness thing that we acknowledge coming to us at Christmas time, you know, it's given, but it's like electricity. You know, the light doesn't go on until you plug it in. And when you plug it in, things begin to happen. But when you plug it in, that's also when your life becomes dangerous. It becomes dangerous because it turns everything upside down. Later in his life, Jesus once told his disciples that if they were to follow him, it might cost them everything. It might cost them their friendship, it might cost them their families, it would alter their lifestyle, it would redirect the course of their existence. You know, even that, remember there's a story of Jesus preaching and his family comes and as Jesus says, come on with us, Jesus, and then they turn to everybody else and forgive us. He's a little different. You know, Jesus knew what that was like. Remember the first time he preaches in Nazareth, he opens the book to the gospel or to the book of Isaiah. And what do they do when they hear it? He says, today this scripture has been fulfilled in your midst. What do? His neighbors take him out to the cliff to throw him off. This is life-giving, but dangerous. Dangerous. Because when you accept it, when you understand it, when you get below all the mush, you know, you're one of those people say, why do you do that? You say, I just have to. It's just who I am. It's just who I'm becoming. It's what I'm called to be. It's the price you pay for the gift God gives. And it's always been that way. Just think of the people we admire and raise up. St. Francis, who gave away his whole inheritance that he might live and work and pray among the poor. Think about Dr. Livingston, who goes to Africa and does exactly the same thing with medical gifts. Think of Mother Teresa, who decides to go to India to work among lepers. You know, and when Mother Teresa, it's a wonderful story, when Mother Teresa goes to India, she goes there because all these people are dying on the streets, so she goes there to build a place they can come and die with dignity. And she writes in her biography, she says that what they discovered is when people came to a place to die with dignity where they were given love and compassion, amazing thing happened. They ceased dying and began to live. It's why doctors and nurses today, and they come home and we lock them up. They go to Africa to work with people dying of Ebola. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It's crazy. And yet it is what they are compelled to do. It's why individuals give up their time and energy to go rebuild homes and houses for people who have had disasters take them away. It is why people, even in this church and in churches past I've served, give up all their vacation for the year so that youth can go on mission trips and experience the same sort of thing. It is why people nightly, we read on the news or hear on the news, why people go to Walmart or Kmart and pay off the debts of those who have things on the layaway trying. It doesn't make any sense. There's a lot of things I could do with $50,000 before that, right? But they do it because they have to. Doesn't make sense. It runs contrary to the patterns of the world. But there is joy and peace, fulfillment and satisfaction in these things that you can't receive anywhere or any other way. Because ultimately, Christmas is not about the big pageant or show that we make of it. Man, we do a good job of that. You know, even the birthplace, the nativity, contradicts that big and powerful and glamorous image. Christmas is about much more. It is about the path to a different and better way of life, one that is dangerous but spirit-filled and God-expressive, one that could change the world, but only after it first changes us. You know, so often we get to the edge of the cliff and we just don't step over. You know, the picture, if you look in the center fold where the sermon note says, Jeannie and I took that picture on the top of Mount Sinai. And it says on the top of Mount Sinai, it has a sign, attention, danger. And I thought to myself, Christmas is the same way. Attention, danger. You step in here, things are going to change. I've told the story again, but they told us in seminary a good story is worth repeating. A number of years ago, it was one of those moments that took me to the edge and made me rethink all of this. I don't remember how long ago, but Jeannie was working in a hospital in Greeley, Colorado, and a family was coming in just before Christmas to give birth to their firstborn, and they talked with great joy about how they had the crib set up and the nursery decorated and everything ready to go, and then the time came for the birth, and the umbilical cord wrapped around the baby's neck, and it died. And Jeannie was attending them, and they were Catholic, and she tried to get assistance, but there was some theological issue why that baby couldn't come into the care of the Catholic Church because of its death and circumstances around it. I don't remember all the details in that regard, but she said, my husband's a minister, he would be glad to assist you in any way he can. And so on December 24th at probably 2 p.m., in the middle of one of those Rocky Mountain high-velocity windstorm with snow coming down that would just drive you off your feet, we put that child in the ground. 5 people present in the cemetery amidst the snow and the cold, so hard that you could hardly stand being there. Jean, the funeral director, the parents, and myself. And Christmas Eve, we put that child to rest. And then at 4 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 10 o'clock, I went to church to do what we always do in church, all the trumpets blaring and the procession of the choir and smiles on people's faces and just all that grand stuff we all love. But I remember sitting there in the midst of all the music and the beauty and the spectacular stuff we had created, because that's what we do, we create that. I thought to myself, I'm not sure God is present here. But I know God was present out there. It was a dangerous moment of faith because it changes everything you look at and see and recognize that we as Christians in the church are called to be about and to do. I'm not sure God is present in what we create, but I am sure that God is present in life and what we are called to be and do. You know, I love the short verse by which Matthew concludes his birth narrative. You know, he tells the story of the wise men, their trip, their confrontation with Herod. They find Jesus, as I told the children, in a house. And then Matthew says, after they'd presented their gifts and they'd worshiped him, Matthew says, and they departed a different way. I think that's one of the most powerful passages in Scripture. It doesn't say exactly where they went. It just says that their whole lives, their path, their journey ahead was different. It was altered. That you can't come into the presence of the Christ truly and be the same. You can't do it. They departed a different way. And so it should be for us. So what I wish for you, everybody here, I don't wish for you necessarily a Merry Christmas. I wish for each person here a dangerous one. I wish for you a dangerous Christmas, one that truly reaches down and touches you, opening your eyes, opening your ears, opening your hearts in such a way as to alter the direction you're currently traveling. It doesn't matter if everybody around you says, oh, that makes sense, or that's what I would do. Well, if you could do it, why aren't you? You know, if you're truly compelled, you don't have to have a reason for it. It is just what you do. It's who you are. You know, there's no reason for God to love us either. It's just who God is. It's just what God does. And so I hope that it alters the direction you're traveling. Through the grace of God. Because then, Christmas will be more than a short-lived experience. It will be a life-giving experience as the presence of Christ enters you. That dangerous gift, that dangerous trip, lest we forget, is really what this day and event is about. Amen.